everyone! Welcome to another episode of 10 Forward Weekly. I am your host, Mike Fadum, also known as Ambassador Kael, and also your community manager. And I'm joined by everyone's favorite Futurama living systems designer. It's Jonathan Herlache!
It's me!
Hello! How you doing, John?
Oh, I'm all right. Can't complain.
We were
Got
talking...
a spicy new ship.
Yeah.
A spicy old torpedo.
It's very spicy. We were talking before stream about how your hair is teleporting in and out on your background. It looks very nice. All right. So we're gonna start with chat on Twitch is like, it's the Maelstrom guy. Ask him about the Maelstrom. Well, that's what we're gonna do, guys. But before that, we are going to do our fan art, and Mike knew he forgot something before tonight, and that was putting the fan art in the stream, so just a second, this is going to look crazy for a moment. Sure, we'll show off Trexperts first, just because while we're here, and it's already playing, so... this is Trexpert sent us a wonderful definition and an example of why we don't have a Tier 6 board cube yet, because boy does that look silly.
We thought about it. We tried pretty hard. We've tried hard multiple times.
Several times. A
lot of corpses on that road.
Mm-hmm. Someday,
we'll get there one day.
Someday we'll find it. The actually flying correctly Borg. The lovers, the dreamers, and me.
There are battles which must not be fought, positions which must not be contested. But if you put a board cube in the position, we're going to keep trying, and eventually we'll probably,
we'll get it. There's dreams that we have. The problem with the way that dreams work on STO is, and I'm sure you've noticed this in your time with the team now, John, is we come up with a really good idea. We try to make it work. We try really hard to make it work. And then something else comes up that's more important, and we have to abandon it, and it stays abandoned for months to maybe forever.
Also, a lot of times we figure out how much it's going to cost, and then the producers in the room explode, and then we have to scrape them up and bring them back to the transporter buffer and make the transporter buffer figure it out.
And when we say cost in this context, folks, it means cost in time and human resources, not necessarily in moolah. It's a phrase. I mean, it is eventually moolah if it's human time, but that's a phrase we use a lot here in game development.
Also, I know how transporter buffers are fictionally supposed to work, so I know I squinted a little bit there, but I have to call it out because otherwise I'll lose points.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Next up, after Trexperts, 21701 sent us a awesome image of the Brain. Really? I knew the name of this ship literally 10 minutes ago. Jonathan, what's the IDW ship called, the new one?
Well, it's changed a lot throughout its life, but it's is it the same ship? It keeps slowly changing, like that old story.
Yeah.
The ship of
Theseus. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. I see. Meanwhile, Solok 42 has finished printing out his Intrepid model, which looks beautiful. Here it is next to all of the other giant ships that he's printed out at. I don't know if they're at full scale because I don't know how big the Intrepid is. I think the Enterprise F is much bigger than the Intrepid. So
yeah, the Intrepid's a little ship, so I think the Intrepid is true to scale, but the others appear to be small models.
Yeah, but these are so freaking cool. And he printed and assembled and painted all of these himself.
They were fantastic. Yeah, it is seriously impressive work.
Yeah. All right, then we're going to.
I can only imagine how much wriggling with the 3D printer head.
Oh God!
I wrestled with the Prusa Mark III long enough to respect it.
I have printed. Let's see if I can find it here. I have printed some starships before. You can't even see that, but not on that scale and not to that detail. It is incredible.
Yeah. I screwed around for a little bit, looking at do I want to get into beetle weight robot fighting? And the answer is.
It's solid, maybe. Mark Hawkman sent us a really cool shot of Ryza. We got a couple Ryza shots in here because the last stream I think was right in the middle of the summer event. Kyle Pancham sent us this awesome shot of, I think that's a Lexington. Looks like a Lexington, hanging out in space dock. Kat Adams sent us a couple of Ryza postcards. I really like this one. The framing on it is really cool, even though it's very much focused on a certain part of someone's anatomy. But it does look like an actual travel postcard.
What? Booty shots at Ryza?
Shocking.
What?
Shocking. The other one she sent us was the classic, looking at a pad on a chair, watching the sunrise or set. It's always something somewhere. Jeff W. has been sending us a lot of pictures of the USS Excalibur, but this is his ship plaque for it. Yeah, I think I was trying to look at the names to see if there's any references, but looking at the names, I think it's actually this actually is based on the Constitution 3, the Titan A from Picard. Hunter Bahamut sent us this cool shot of the fighters flying over this is not a nebula. This is a galaxy.
That's the future galaxy.
Yeah. Endeavor Gaming sent us this cool shot of a fleet lined up. I'm assuming from one of his streams because he gets these kind of cool shots all the time. Elliot Anders sent us this is definitely a Connie flying out through space, and it's pretty. Dwayne0932 sent us this shot of your fire-breathing dragon ability, John, on a Fakiri ship. Looks beautiful.
Oh, that's so perfect. I really wanted to see that make its way to a Fakiri fire build, too. I'm glad
and also coming out of an Oberth. Because
Naturally.
My life is pain.
Wow.
Wow. Chris McCain sent us this shot of a Kelvin timeline constitution pulling into space dock. And there we go. That is our fan art for this week. Okay, nice. So we did something unusual this week, John, in that we put out a blog that was specifically just a designer talking about design things, and I'm very happy we did that, and I hope we do more of it. But give us a little bit of a summation in your own words of the blog that you wrote about the Maelstrom and other changes we're thinking of.
Well, the blog itself started with a summary, so we've got to go deeper. But if the top stops spinning, we get trapped in the summary, so we have to be careful. But I don't remember the movie very well. So a while back on the Legendary Akira bundle, we trialed a new kind of torpedo called a Maelstrom torpedo. That's basically an attempt to recapture what torpedoes were meant to be. Both from the show and from the game when it launched. The notion was that you would strip your enemy's shields and fire torpedoes for devastating effect, but more or less the only place that ever actually occurs is the tutorial and parts briefly beyond it. This was a very long cooldown, but in exchange, you'd get to do massive spike damage, and you'd basically be able to duct tape 12 or so quantum torpedoes together and push them all through a single torpedo spread or a single high yield. That's sort of the core promise of the weapon. And it mostly performed pretty dang well. Relatively low end DPS for a weapon slot, which is the trade-off that you get for your spike damage. But the issue we started seeing both internally and externally, people kept asking which bosses specifically, and it's most of them, depending on circumstance. It gets. The thing is, you can push anything in this game to do anything almost. You can get huge DPS out of an Oberth if you try hard enough. And the issue is that if you take a very potent ship and you put it in a public queue, you'll see the boss melt very quickly, and people will think, oh, that ship's very powerful. I'm a little annoyed that the boss went away so quickly, but I understand it's because of the power level of this player. And the root issue there is that we have very, very powerful ships that don't have an incentive to seek out advanced or more difficult queues, so they end up in the basic queue, they stomp the boss. But when you take all that power, you put it into one really visually identifiable weapon, and that one single weapon blows up the boss, now that's not a problem with the ship, that's a problem with the weapon. And it also is massively more frustrating. You get this instant of oh, I'm ready to do the boss, and it just gets rug yanked away from you. It's optimized for sadness in a way where as a designer, we're really not happy when the bad feelings get to experience multiplicative scaling. That's not what we want. So that was kind of the big motivation. Also internally, we had some QA guys blowing up test bosses for new TFOs we're developing. We've got this cool new boss, and then the QA is just Maelstrom, and the boss is just so we had to do something. So I had two different fixes in mind. I had the elegant simple fix and the complex targeted fix. The complex fix is a precision munition. It's like a balanced JDAM. Like you know exactly what it's going to do. Very, very much like I just typed the problem into the tooltip so that it goes away kind of situation, where it's like it explicitly does less damage against bosses in certain circumstances. And then the simple solution was just, well, when we first made this, we kind of figured 90 seconds was going to be the extreme upper end. My idea was to test what the game could put up with in terms of a long cooldown weapon, because I figured players might not be okay with deferring gratification that long. Deferred gratification is a big game dev buzzword for lots of good reasons. Turns out might actually be more of a sweet spot. When we tried the lower cooldown paradigm, we found out not only does the torpedo need all that muscle to actually do its job, which I was a little surprised by. I thought it would be able to do most of what it was trying to do at the lower cooldown paradigm, and that it was mostly overkilling. Turned out to be less true than I had realized. But then also people just like enjoyed the slower play pattern a lot more, which was that was a big shock. It suggests the 90-second times might be more of a sweet spot than like an extreme upper bound. But you know, the results of that confirmed that like, okay, we need the precision solution. So that's what we're working on, and we'll be getting that live when it ships. QA's right now. It's done development, but it's in QA right now, and you can't easily predict. You know,
Yep.
Futurama reference. It's like waiting for a random number generator to reach zero. As soon as they stop sending me tickets, we'll be ready to ship it. Don't know when that'll be.
Yeah, so
Hopefully soon.
Just to clarify that, John sends it to QA. If they find a bunch of problems to send it back to him, then he sends it back to QA, and that goes back and forth forever until it's
Yeah.
ready to go, and for you guys to find the bugs now.
Yeah. There's never going to be like a bajillion Maelstrom weapons in the game, just because they're actually pretty pricey on the back end. A normal torpedo has something like 15 powers. The Maelstrom clocks in at closer to 60. It is just a lot more work on systems to put those things together. But you don't really need like a ton of variety and different kind of Maelstrom weapons to do their job. And we want to make room for at least a few more. I've got some ideas. Because the upsides of the Maelstrom are pretty overwhelming. It has been like it's attractive in like a high-end DPS chasing way because it starts the mission charge. So in like speedrun environments where the engagement's extremely short, it like has Hulk strength. That's not really a balanced target one way or the other. That's fine how it is as far as I'm concerned. But what I was really excited to see is how much fun people have with it. Like the qualitative experience of it rather than the numerical output of it seems to be very positive. So I'm very interested in keeping the pattern. Anything
Neat.
that threatens that core feel-good loop is going to get my attention until it doesn't threaten it anymore.
Yeah. Wolf Paws, we can talk about the Cyclone issue really fast. I believe that issue is now fixed.
Yeah.
But if you guys are still experiencing it, I think you have to. What was it that we were telling people to do if they were still stuck? They had to like. They just have to do a respec, and then it should all be fixed. But it should have fixed itself without you needing to do that.
I wouldn't have expected you to need to do anything, but if you do, you can force the game to do what's called rebuild your power tree. And the way you do that is by spending a skill point or like taking one back. Like you basically just wiggle your skill point slightly, or I think map move can do it. There's like a few different ways to force a power tree rebuild.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That was a kind of a funny story, but I guess I won't
that
go
is.
into
We
it.
will. Well, actually, is
Well,
the
it's
thing we're
connected to
showing
the
up today?
friendship is the funny part.
Yeah. Okay. So then we can talk about that when we get to the friendship, which we'll be talking about in a second. Let's see. We had. I wanted to open it for people who have questions about the
right.
Maelstrom.
You're right.
Specifically, we'll deal with other questions as the stream goes on. But if you got anything about the Maelstrom, let me know. Trexpert, I don't know if this is your department or if we have to hand this to Travis, John. But Trexpert wants to know about moving the Maelstrom to the radial menu on Xbox and PlayStation.
Yeah, I remember that before, and I have a little progress to report there. I've got my console test rig all set up, and our programmer has a bit of time, but I haven't had like enough time to get in there and figure out how to do it precisely. But it sounds like If you're here and you're a console player, can you get real specific about what you're asking for? Because the more specific you are, the less I have to learn about how to run the console emulator. It
So
sounds
I'm
like
gonna.
moving it to the radial menu was what I heard.
That is what was been requested. I am going to follow that up and say, Trexpert, I know exactly how specific you can be, my friend. Send me an email with specificity, and I will forward that email to John, because otherwise chat will get taken over to right now. But
yeah, that's seriously going to save me probably hours. So
yeah,
very very appreciate that.
let's see. Duncan Idaho wants to know, how does the need for Maelstrom updates affect interest in making more Maelstrom-like torpedoes? Maelstrom-type torpedoes, example,
Oh
Proton or
yeah,
Transphasic.
they're intricately linked and necessary. Basically, I'm going to be very reluctant to just like kind of horf some new thing into the game without having some chance to like test and tune it in a live environment. There is no meaningful way to internally replicate the live environment. So any new weapon system I intend to proliferate, I'm going to have to go through a patch cycle or two, unless I get really lucky on the first shot. Which it actually kind of looked like we did on the
actually.
Well, and it looked like that's what the Maelstrom did. For a while, it looked like the Maelstrom was just going to be fine, but people got a little better at optimizing it, and more importantly, it filtered down into casual environments more, and it started to, in particular, content designers who felt the burden, basically trying to like we had the option of do something to the Maelstrom's interaction with bosses, or do something to all the bosses in the game. Pretty obvious which one we're going to need to go with in that world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's absolutely necessary, and this is kind of what I've been waiting for. Like when we first made the Maelstrom, I was pretty specific that it was gonna need a little bit of wiggling after it came out. But once it was wiggled, so that's kind of what we're waiting for. Is like if these new changes land well, more Maelstroms. If they don't land well, more changes, then more Maelstroms. It's kind of where I'm thinking.
Distant Knight didn't ask this as a question, but I'm going to phrase it as a question. Do you think that the Maelstrom starting with max charges, meaning you don't have to wait to do your insane spike damage, is a big part of the issue with it?
Surprisingly, no. It's a big part of its performance at the weird speedrun environments where like people will like plow through ISA really quickly. But like that's never really been the environment we balance the game for. We don't mind performance in that environment, and we don't seek performance in that environment because fundamentally that's kind of like the game approaching a singularity where it's getting spaghettified by the weird like pressures of the like DPS race. And ultimately, in most more normal environments, when you first enter a mission or a TFO, you have to fight weaker enemies for a while. So it's starting charged in that environment is actually secretly just pretty healthy. It lets you pop an early wave, but you're going to have to sandbag at most of the encounter if you want to get to something meatier. So it's a part of the high-end importance, and if it starts to cause a pain, if like we don't target balance for extreme high end, but we do respond to player pain at the extreme high end. That's actually part of what motivated the Maelstrom second round of changes, which is that players at the extreme high end were reporting an unacceptable loss of viability. But it's not really something that we're looking to do, if that makes sense. So that was kind of me. That was kind of maundering. I didn't like compact my thoughts very well before I spoke. So if I missed something, please go ahead and just ask again.
Amir Asseline wants to know, will there ever be a wide-angle Maelstrom torpedo?
Don't know. I've actually had some weird thoughts in my head about like maybe some kind of torpedo sidewinder situation, but time will tell. I wanna take the extra weapons I made and proliferate them and get them into like a healthy, stable place before I keep making new extra weapons. So right now, and we have some older ones that never really got proliferated in a way I'd hope. Turns out the wide-angle dual beam bank, the dual heavy beam bank, it uses different art, which makes it tremendously more expensive to implement, which is unfortunate.
Hold on, John. One sec. Sorry, can I interrupt you for 1 sec? Wolfpaws pointed out, and I see this now. Only I am being captioned right now. Can you check for me? Does the URL you are in for OBS.Ninja have and transcribe and CC in it?
Sure does. And when I load in, it says this browser does not support closed captioning, which I'm going to
go ahead. Not using Chrome. Okay. You're using Firefox?
Yeah, but I can switch to Chrome.
That would, if you could do that. We'll just lose John for a second. But yeah, if you could do that so we can get the captions, that would be great. Hello, everyone. I will entertain you briefly. No, I'll answer some questions that folks came in. Oh, he's back already.
I expect you might have to redo my volume, so I'm starting very quiet.
Oh,
Do I sound
actually, your
quiet?
volume sounds good. Talk at your normal
Okay,
volume.
cool beans.
Talk at your normal volume for me for a sec. Just
This is my
say,
normal volume.
great,
I
you're
am
good.
saying words at my normal volume.
Great, perfect. Okay, we're back. All right,
Awesome.
I'm sorry. I interrupted you mid-thought. Do you remember the thought, or did I yeet the thought into oblivion?
No thoughts head empty, but I do have other things I was hoping to say. I saw
Yeah.
someone ask why Maelstroms respond to photon instead of quantum. I thought I fixed that like a month after release. They're tagged quantum across the board. If they're still responding to photon instead of quantum, uh, bug it. I'll ask QA to try to re-verify it. I thought I squished that one with a hammer quite a while ago, so sad to hear that's still an issue. But it
Yeah.
could be one of those things where like everybody thinks it's an issue, nobody looks at it, it just kind of lingers. So,
All right.
um,
Do we have any other Maelstrom questions, folks? I'm seeing a lot of questions about other stuff coming in, and we appreciate that, and we will probably jump in here and there about those. But did you see anything I missed, John?
I just doing a quick scroll ski up, and I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing people who say they prefer it with photon buffs, which are like, that seems like pretty strong evidence it's working with photon and not quantum. I'm
Yep.
deeply confused as to how that's even possible because it's not with power tags, so I'm gonna have to do a little digging. If there's a specific photon trait it works with, kicking that into chat would make my work a little faster because then I'd be able to grab that, see why it's working, and so on.
Cool. Um, Adam, well, that's not a Maelstrom question. All right. So this sounds like we are at the end of the Maelstrom section. John, was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we got to ships?
Let's see.
There was that
There were
thing we were going
probably
to do at the
broader
end of the
questions.
Maelstrom question.
Yeah, there were probably
Okay.
questions I missed in the chat, so I want like if I missed your question, I very much apologize. It is not my intent to miss any questions. But yeah, so before I was talking about like I want to get the Maelstrom tuned, but then the next thing would be taking a look at shields and shield desirability in Star Trek Online. And now that the Maelstrom seems to be kind of rounding the bend and settling down into a because like the time before the patch was not settled for us. That time was, well, I haven't done anything to it, and I'm still gathering data on what I need to do because it's doing some stuff we don't like. But yeah, the next thing on my plate is shields. It's going to be a bit because I need to catch my breath. The advanced consoles in particular took a lot out of us on systems. There was a lot of midnight oil. Cryptic's really good about never asking us for crunch, but that doesn't save us from our eyes being bigger than our stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that those consoles had more to them than we realized, which is, I mean, it sounds obvious, but it wasn't really the parse stuff that was the problem. The problem was getting the implementations to work right. In particular, the science consoles were a bit of a bear. And there is some follow-up stuff I want to do on the advanced consoles. In particular, I think the science ones are underperforming a little bit right now. The drain one especially. I've hit it with a wrench so many times it should work with every BOF power at this point, which is kind of weird because like the way these things normally work, stuff like weapon effects that cause drain effects shouldn't connect to it, but I kind of manually forced it to do it. But there's still questions of like it's kind of clunky. It doesn't seem to be performant. And then on the other science console, there's the one that like pushes the base power values. And that one is probably just a numbers thing. It probably just needs a little more juice. And yeah, I talk fast and a lot, so yeah, the closed captioning for me is definitely blurst.
Well, it has to be because that's just how we got the information out there. But I was actually as I was watching your text box fill up and then restart and then fill up, I was thinking I need to do a new overlay for the stream now that I'm doing closed captions more regularly. So I will look into
Oh,
that.
and someone recovered my missing thought. Yeah, the wide angle dual heavy beam banks have special graphics. No, an FX dependency, my weakness. I can't just make a whole ton of those. I need an artist, and those are expensive. So yeah, wide angle dual heavy, that's going to be tougher to proliferate. But the narrow angle ones and maelstroms, and I want to make more of those like spec affiliated fighters. Those are pretty cool. And Proton needs some loving. I just got like a little pile. I want to do something with energy torpedoes, but that's all like little stuff. The next big thing on my plate is going to be trying to figure out what to do with shields, and that's a tricky one because ultimately shields are a defensive fantasy. Shields say, you can't get to me. And the only thing that's interestingly different between shields and hull is the reason that everyone cares about hull and nobody cares about shields, which is you die when your hull reaches 0 and you do not die when your shields reach 0. And our game isn't terribly threatening. Like our enemies have not kept up with the power creep we give players because obviously they physically can't. We release so many new toys for players constantly. We rarely ever release new enemies, and we even more rarely ever go back and touch old enemies. So trying to get like normal to be difficult is like a non-starter. And like figuring out what can shields take away from the enemies to help you? I don't have much left, Like I can't really like. So I want to get into the space and investigate. I have some interesting ideas, but to me, shields are deeply intrinsically linked with the concept of difficulty. And the thing after shields, and maybe connected at the hip to shields in my head, is what to do about providing players who want more difficult content access to it. I don't know what that's going to mean. Maybe that means something after Elite. Maybe that means changes to Elite. Maybe that means like a different reward structure or a different event structure for like, an Elite event of some sort. We're very pie in the sky. These are all like kind of Jeremy always used to have these like sticky notes on his desk with like just hopes and dreams written on them. Very similar to that, where most of these ideas aren't going to happen, but one or two might. And what would really benefit me right now is brainstorming. So that's like the next sprint, we call them internally. I got a couple days set aside to do some research and like idea gathering and brainstorming. The main thing that's got my eye right now is like kind of a two-prong attack. First prong is the shield torpedo interaction never really did what it was supposed to do. It would be nice to figure out how to do that, but I don't want to cripple torpedo builds, so that's going to be really sensitive. And the second thing is in the show, shields stop bullshit. Like, I want to do bullshit to your ship. I can't. Your shields are up. I can't beam your bridge crew into your lavatories. I can't, hack your computers or whatever. Like, shields stop most of the weird bullshit. So I can imagine a world where there's, like, a relationship between shields and control resistance, where enemies have more control effects, but as long as your shields are up, you don't feel it that much. And then when your shields are down, they can really start to mess with you. They're mostly just pie in the sky ideas, but both of those feel promising to me because they don't upset the current ecosystem too much, and they let the game feel more like the show while promoting kind of a healthy rock paper scissors environment. Because you got, well, shields stop control builds, but then drains strip shields. Torpedoes can punish a lack of shields. Beams can punish shields. There's this kind of like overlapping ecosystem of desires, and energy torpedoes are kind of an underexplored space that seems like they would give torpedo builds a tool to deal with enhanced shield interaction with torpedoes. And I absolutely love the way torpedo builds work. I mean, I've been called out as being a fan of torpedo builds before. Guilty as charged. I try to treat all my stuff very equally. We've been focusing on other stuff other than torpedoes for a while now, but the way that you choose which torpedo for which situation is good gameplay and probably the best basic weapon gameplay. So I do not want to mess with that. That's rule number one in game design: is don't break it. And I really don't want to break what's happening with torpedoes in the course of servicing shields. And that's probably going to be the number one challenge with dealing with shields: is how do I create that outcome in a way that is risk averse? Because the older the game gets, the less risks you can take, because I mean, it's a big game. There's a lot in it.
Yeah. I'm going to answer Spicy Ball Meme's question really quick.
I knew I was going to invite Arrested Development memes.
Because he's been patiently copy and pasting it over and over. Yes, there is a very good chance that we will create the new version of the Inquiry. I don't know when or what form it'll take, but I know those conversations have started. All right. So, you want to show off a ship?
Oh, I so much do.
Okay.
I also love how my picture just keeps like sliding around. It's something to do with this cursed background software I'm using. Hey, here I go again. Here I go.
Oh, there you go. I thought you were just scooting your chair around.
No. See, I have to like move my body and shift my mass to scoop my chair. That's some haunted software slide.
I don't know if you know this. This is just a piece of trivia that popped into my head, but wrong franchise, but in Return of the Jedi, the Emperor slowly turning around in his chair. The motor was broken, and so that's actually Ian McDiarmid very carefully doing it with his toes.
That's amazing. And
All
there's
right.
those like classic Russian dancers that kind of like look like mobiles or whatever. They look like I don't know the word for it, but they look like an automaton because they just glide.
Yeah, it's great. All right, let's look at a ship. Moving to ship now. Ladies and gentlemen, some of you guessed it already because Jonathan actually said it earlier. The Friendship class. This ship appeared in season 3 of Discovery, maybe also season. No, sorry, yeah, first in season 3 of Discovery, and is now coming to a Star Trek Online near you. So this is unfortunately the artist for this was an outsourcer, so we didn't have it. And then he lives in another country. I believe it was Tobias who outsourced this for us, which means we don't have an artist on the stream to talk about it because Thomas couldn't make it either, as he's getting prepped for 58-year mission. Is it this year? I mean, we can just call it STLV. They do now. It was so funny. I don't know if you know this. They lost the license to Star Trek Las Vegas because they lost the license from Paramount, and so they started calling it like 55-year mission and then 56-year mission, et cetera, et cetera. But so many people have called it STLV still that they this year I think just started calling it STLV again, and I think it's one of those like no one will sue us if we do this, right? Right?
Turns out you can try that pretty cheaply as long as you run away cheaply when you get a mean email from a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. I love how this ship, I mean, it both kind of looks like a sword, and also it's like a lock. I mean, it's very clearly
like
a
sword
here.
Or like a specific sword.
Oh, that's what it's reminding me of. Thank you.
CJ DJ got there first, but I was thinking it the whole time that I've been working on this thing.
Hold on.
You have one? You have a friendship model 3D printed?
Of course I do. But I just unplugged my monitor, so just a moment.
Colors. Okay.
No, tell me anyway. I can hear you.
Oh, I bet you went with a strange translucent color for the nacelles for some reason.
Yes, that is exactly what I did. Here it is. Okay. My Borg cube has to sit behind my monitor, but all the stuff it needs to plug into is on the other side. So, where is my model of the friendship? Yes, here it is. That's hilarious that I didn't notice that before.
Was it trapped in amber and you had to like break it out?
Like, yeah, that's
amber clad.
Anyway. So this is the friendship. We don't have a lot of art to talk about with it, but I wanted to just spin around it and show it off a little bit so you guys can see how pretty it is. Kevin Stillman, no. Thomas is not going to STLV in an official capacity. None of us can. Because they don't have the license anymore. But here you can see an up-close of the nacelles and how very pretty they are.
And it absolutely is Marketer Chief. Yeah, right. Duncan Idaho asks if the sword can spin, or if the ship can spin around like a buzzsaw and like presumably cut up Harkonnen. And yeah, we like were tempted. We were very sorely tempted by designs that really leaned into the ship's unusual shape. Another idea was to use the big like nacelles as like some kind of Rayleigh gun.
Oh yeah.
The thing is, those lead us in strange directions that don't feel very Star Trek-y and or don't feel very unique. This game has so goddamned many lances. Like, artillery is the king of battle. We certainly understand artillery is the king of battle. But how many ships need howitzers? Like, you don't put howitzers on everything.
You know, it's one of those things where we've got a franchise based on peaceful exploration that we sort of maybe kind of turned into a combat heavy game.
Games do that.
Videos games do that. So now we've got a now every ship needs to have the big gun.
Oh man, now I want to make a space HIMARS. Someone put that idea in my head, and I actually really love that idea. I don't know how to promote the play pattern because it's like you'd have to mostly load it up with weaknesses. Our ships can take a punch, even like littler ships can take a punch.
Yeah.
But that play style is the shoot and scoot, so much fun. Anyway, so this thing actually has a pretty robust inspiration from its more fictional side. So the version we saw in Disco Season 3 was named the Thant, which is a UN Secretary General. And generally speaking, the friendship class,
generally
like
speaking,
it has these kind of kitschy vibes to it, but under the kitschy, there's actually this kind of iron layer. Like you get the like everyone wants to hug and get along layer, and that's kind of a nice warm fuzzy energy. And I don't mean to disrespect that energy, but I mean to undergird it with something that's a little bit more substantive because we've seen a move in the modern world towards a concept that is, I'm going to refresh again with the name of the Starship trait later, where cooperation is the dominant strategy. Like small countries are finding that banding together is becoming meta. The same way that trench warfare was the meta during World War I for various reasons I'm not going to get into. It's not quite the same as the race to the sea where it emerges from geography, but ultimately it is just better to work together than to fight. Who'd have thunk it? And the premise behind Starfleet that, different factions like Klingons often deride is ultimately pretty ironclad. And at the end of the day, cooperation is the dominant strategy. If you work together, you will get more shit done. And that led me in a direction of a dedicated support ship because it's been a very long time since we made one. And I immediately realized, oh, goody, carrier. Because support ships are already kind of carriers, and it turns out you can make powers that buff your allies that just do more stuff to hangar pets pretty easily. So that's what this ship is. Pretty straightforward. It's a support platform that it can also be selfish. Because the support elements it brings, you can just put into your own hangar pets. So you can fly this thing as a solo carrier and buff the Christ out of your own hangar pets. In particular, it synergizes very nicely with independent wingmate. If you have like a weird high-low mix where you have like one bigger pet and then a bunch of little ones, that should work pretty well on this ship. And yeah, that's kind of the design concept. Is like it's a supporting friendly ship that will work quite well supporting another player ship, and also be pretty effective in solo play.
All right.
Now, and it's a flight deck carrier. I think I glossed over that, but yeah, it's a flight deck carrier.
A lot of folks are noticing and excited about the fact that it is a 4/4 flight deck carrier. You want to talk a little bit about that design philosophy?
Yeah, it didn't feel right to give it 5/3, and I don't like going worse than 4/4, so 4/4 it is.
All right.
They don't all. Not everything I do has a galaxy brain reason. In fact, actually, I'm pretty against that. It kind of gets into a different philosophical discussion, but turns out I'm a big believer in the high-low mix, both inside design and like in larger force structures. Like generally speaking, taking a bunch of big bets on a ship at the same time is a recipe for disaster. So you take one or two big bets, and then everything else is mostly familiar ground.
Nice. All right. So we've got. Is this the console, the power transfer emitters?
It sure is.
All right. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about. Let me make sure your face isn't covering it. Hold on. Yeah, your face was definitely covering it. Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to move your face. There we go.
So power transfer emitters.
Tell us a little bit about the power transfer emitters.
Inspired a bit by the tethers we saw in Disco Season 3, it essentially lets you transfer power to another ship. And it's a targeted buff that gives them crit chance, a sizable chunk of crit chance, like a pretty serious amount of crit chance. And while they have the buff, any critical hits they perform will zap their foe for pretty significant damage. So it's like, if you remember the mycelial lightning proc from the Disco rep, it's kind of like that. It's like a little zappy. Damage is right now roughly around a beam array shot. That might come up or down. We have a lot more wiggle room for this because it's donating power, so it can be allowed to be a little more powerful than selfish power. But it is, it's on the strong side, so the numbers you're seeing here might come down a little bit. It's kind of hard to parse, so we'll see. But yeah, and then the bonuses it provides are tripled for hangar pets. So it provides 3 times as much crit chance because hangar pets have virtually no way of acquiring crit chance, and the zap does 3 times as much damage coming from a hangar pet. I also believe its passives are pretty saucy. I think one of the things the console does as a passive is grant your hangar pets crit chance.
It does 10% according to this tooltip.
Yeah, so pretty beefy pet console there.
Yeah,
and the
cool.
Yeah, generally speaking, the hanger pets do not have anywhere near as many axes to scale crit. So the crit numbers you're going to see on hanger pets are going to be a little big compared to what you're used to. But that's because you can't really stack hanger pet crit sev. So like, temper expectations. It's going to be good, but I'm not sure it's going to knock your socks off on hanger pets. In the support role, that's the one that scares me. The support strength of this thing is like, I'm not sure I could get away with it. I'm gonna have to be a little careful with the tuning on the support strength.
We'll find out. All right, our trait here is cooperation is the dominant strategy. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, cooperation is the dominant strategy is pretty straightforward. Whenever you buff an ally, whether one of your hanger pets or another friendly ship, with either a bridge officer power or a console power, you apply a stack of friendship is science. And then each stack of friendship is science grants bonuses, and the bonuses are larger for hanger pets. Pretty straightforward. Note that this does not work when if you deploy like a shield emitter that buffs everything. Like pets that cause buffs don't apply this. So specifically markers. Command spec has a couple marker powers that drop a marker that applies a buff. Those don't work with it, but everything else does. Anything that's from your ship directly to the target ship will benefit from it, including the console on this ship. Yeah, and it stacks up pretty high. You can grant a fair amount of bonus damage this way. And
Right.
yeah, friendship is science. I had a big internal debate about whether or not to just name the trait friendship is science directly. And the reason I didn't is because I don't think it lands as well. Like it comes across as kind of fuck yeah, science, and like that doesn't really feel like the Starfleet I'm trying to convey with this ship. So I start with the bedrock of very formal cooperation is the dominant strategy, and then you get in there, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, that means friendship is literally science. So
To answer somebody's question, the hangar pets are the ones we've seen before. They are your standard 32nd century Federation shuttlecraft. Right? We've seen these before?
yeah. Though we
Yeah.
did buff them recently because I felt like they were on the humble side. But yeah, they get the 32 siege fed shuttle.
Yeah. All right. And then stations. For stations on this ship, we have a Lieutenant Universal, Ensign Universal, Lieutenant Commander Tactical Intelligence, Commander Engineering, and Lieutenant Commander Science. So there we go. Chat, which do you want to do first? Do you want to you want to look at Vanity Shields, or you want to go see this thing get into a fight?
Could I address a couple questions quick
Oh
about how
yeah,
the trait works?
go ahead.
Yeah, people are asking about how it works. It mechanically what it does is it attaches to bridge officer powers and console powers that emanate from your ship. So, in order to work, a power must be either a bridge officer power or a console power, and be something that is applied by your ship to your ally. So any intermediary will prevent it. So if it's like a support hangar pet, or you deploy a platform, or you place a marker, or anything like that, it won't apply. Anything that's directly from your ship to your friend, it will apply.
Neat. I am doing some Vanity Shields while you answer questions, so keep throwing in those requests in chat. Was there another one you wanted to jump on?
There was just like 8 copies of that one.
Okay, great. I'll throw Section 31 up because I know everybody
And a
always wants to
request
do
for a
that.
command pilot carrier, which duly noted.
Hmm. Ooh. I mean, obviously it looks good on this. Section 31 looks good on everything, but still, Section 31
Oh,
looks real good on this.
people were asking why rarer engineering carrier and not more standard psi carrier. It has to do with it has to do with a bunch of stuff, but right now psi carriers are in kind of a weird spot. Originally, the Hangar Pet advanced console was meant to be a science advanced console instead of an engineering one. Until I went through the game and figured out that there were like 3 ships with max science or console slots and hangar bays, and like 20 something engineering ships with max engineering slots and hangar bays, and 2 hangar bays that is. And it's like, oh, yeah, we might have originally intended science to be the carrier spec, but like ultimately engineering is the Minion Mancer spec. It has all the actual functional starships that have the hangar bays. So like there's a little tension there. We want to support science hangar ships more, but that's not an immediate thing. That's something we're going to kind of maturate into, kind of grow it out later. Probably with like if when we do another round of advanced consoles, you might see a science hangar console in there, and then that would open the door to more science carrier ships.
All right, dropping the Borgons. That was the next request. You may have noticed Lucari didn't really didn't look like it usually does, but pink looks really good on this. All right, we've got Riemann request.
Yeah, the entity cap issue I'm seeing people note about, and yeah, that's a serious issue we're trying to figure out too. Um, it shouldn't be possible. Like, this is me as a designer. I'm not saying how the game works or what programming should do or anything like that because I don't know any of that stuff. But to me as a designer, I'm a little disappointed if players encounter entity cap issues just by using a carrier with hanger pets. If you're, pairing with 40 million pets, it's going to be different, but that's what you're trying to do. So, like, I guess have fun. Hopefully, you're not spoiling other people's experience too much in public TFOs, please. Thank you. But generally, that's just not something design can easily address. And maybe that means we have to slow our roll with regards to supporting carriers, or at least maybe emphasize smaller numbers of larger pets rather than larger numbers of smaller pets. But ultimately, those solutions are kind of strained. It's like trying to solve a problem with the wrong tool. Ultimately, this is a discussion that is more performance oriented, and we're going to take our marching orders for programming. If they want design to do something different, we're going to comply. So we'll see how it goes, but definitely it's something on our radar.
For whoever asked for the dielectric oscillation shield, I hope you're happy. Let's see. Baul. Okay, this is gonna be. We're gonna do Baul, and I'm gonna do one of the baseball ones, and then we're gonna go on to looking at the ship in action. Ooh, Baul looks very Tron. That's very nice.
Someone asked me about a C-store version of this ship, and that's such a good idea. Like anyone breaking into the high end on virtually any game forever, ARPG, MMO, almost anything, support is your gateway. Support is the easiest thing to kit most of the time. It's the easiest thing to play most of the time. So yeah, that's just a brilliant idea. I'm gonna try to figure something out there.
And there's Slime Devils to finish us off. All right, let's go over to our gala and put this thing through its paces. What happened to my? Oops. Oh, because I've cut.
Yeah, I'm worried about Starfleet cloak proliferation too. It's the door the show opened essentially, so we can't help but walk through it. But I'm not sure going through and manually updating Klingon cloaks is the right answer there. I think I might do something more like Klingon characters get access to a special personal trait that like really amps the crap out of your cloak, something like that. That way we can keep it as like a KDF flavor because I'm worried about like diluting KDF flavor.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into a weird arms race where I like have to keep buffing cloak specific powers. That's kind of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, you should definitely not do that, and certainly not make my KDF cloaks super powerful. I would hate that.
Well, I'll just give you a personal trait, and then that'll do that. Well, I mean, someone mentioned problem with pure support, you get AFK penalty. You actually don't, because pure supports, at least in our game, they apply a lot of debuffs with their weapons. You're using like fire at will to apply debuffs to multiple enemies, so you don't have to worry about that.
Also, AFK tech is not based off of just damage dealing. It's based off of doing anything. Just as a heads up on that. All right. Oh wait, I have to actually talk to these people. Oh no, I don't. Launch fighters, launch fighters. I just like saying that every time. I'm gonna since this ship somehow I didn't end up putting on any bridge officers. I'm gonna just turn on God mode real quick. Okay. So there's overwhelm power emitters going off. So we're helping out the Benthans as well as our ship, or well as our hangar pets.
Beezer.
Pew pew. Pew pew.
Enjoy the cool minty fresh lightning.
Minty lightning. Okay, that actually looks cool when your pets start using it. When does this hit the Infinity Box? I believe next week. That is what I remember having on my calendar.
I'm glad that was a rhetorical question, not a question to me, because I don't know.
Oh, no, it was a response to a chat question. General Spinobi, great name, over on YouTube wants to know if there's any plans to add niche damage types like fire, electrical, or cold damage to the modifiers for Spire and or advanced consoles.
Not immediate, but definitely on my radar. It's something where I want to feel like the what I don't want to do is just clutter it up with junk mods that people have to reroll. That's not really my intent with those. A number of mods that I personally consider to be lower priority got grandfathered in a way that I couldn't really realistically prune, but I really don't want to proliferate either. So I want to make sure that like weird energy types are pretty well served, and then go from there. I don't know if I'll be bundling them or doing them individually. I feel like there's also some other stuff. These are far future, to clarify. The things I said earlier that were my priority remain my priority. So shield stuff, difficulty stuff. Proliferating elemental types is not part of that, so it'll wait a little longer. But in my head, cold and fire should probably be one damage type called thermal, because it's like the problem of where does the heat go is a huge space problem, and you mostly deal with those two problems in the same way using like similar tools. And then so like that might be a bundle, and like a precursor step to that might be a mod that's like fire and cold, like all sorts of mods that just say thermal without me actually having to merge the two damage types in a way that would require lots and lots of systems time.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to see what I can. Ultimately, the company mostly has me making ships, and for fairly obvious reasons. There's no video game if there's no ships, so there needs to be ships. And my ability to influence the game is mostly through that vector. So there are things that I will do that influence the game's environment that come out in the form of something stuck on a ship, because that's what I can reach. That's what I can touch. And once it's built, then it's a lot easier to proliferate rather than asking for time to build a thing. One step at a time. Shields directly impact ships, so it's easy for me to make the case. I can go to people and say, hey, I want to serve our science ships better. Shields are a big part of the IP. We want them to work better. That's a conversation that makes sense. If I go up and say, I want Star Trek ships to shoot fire and lightning because I like mages in fantasy games, they're going to look at me and be like, no? And I'm going to be like, yeah, you caught the tater. Like, I don't have a good argument here. So, yeah, it's just something that's going to have to organically grow, but I'm definitely gardening in that direction.
The orange beam spam, August gunnery coming off the pets, I believe, is our console power being activated on them, right?
The pets themselves have like a weird move that's like a damage over time / heal over time they switch between, so it could also be that. Okay. But our console does like minty green lightning and a minty green tether, so probably it's not our console.
Okay. Sorry, one of my launch shuttlecraft went away for some reason, so there we go. Nitaneros, we have had a lot of discussions about effect spam and what to do about it. Those discussions started, and then, like I said, about a lot of things we talk about, I believe they got pushed to one side for something else. So I will thank you for reminding me. I will bring it up again and see if we can get those conversations started again.
It's definitely something we're going to want to address. I am not sure the best way to acquire the momentum. I also know what happened to it. It's like it was on our radar. We were paying attention to it, and then programming basically got sideswiped for several months due to unavoidable circumstances. And now that programming is back on track, this is a good time to restart that conversation.
Yeah. So I'll bring it up in Leeds tomorrow and see what happens. Let's see.
Yeah, this is definitely in a space too where there's probably a right way to do it that takes a long time, but I would bet my bottom dollar that there's a quick and dirty way to do it that will save a lot of player pain and won't take as much time.
I could lose that bet. I believe Travis and Keith have talked about that sort of thing before, but I don't know for sure, and I don't want to promise anything.
It's beyond my ken. I don't want to tell you more than I know, and I straight up don't understand their work. So,
Oliver Roger, yes, there is a very, very, very good chance that a ship from another game will show up, but not the Ark Royal. I'll leave you guessing as to what the next ship from another game to appear in Star Trek Online might be.
It's a fun area of speculation.
Because I think they won't guess it. I think they'll go completely down the wrong track. I've seen a bunch of questions, this one specifically from Abner Rosario on Facebook, but can you talk a little bit about the situation with the Cyclone Intel escort and the Nadion saturation bomb?
Oh, that was just it's one of those cursed old consoles that specifically manually lists the individual ships it's allowed to equip instead of doing it by class, so I had to manually add the ship.
Okay, so that'll be fixed soon.
Yeah, trivial.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember wanting to mention what caused the issue with the Cyclone.
Oh
Basically, it's
yeah,
just we're training up some new folks on how to do some stuff adjacent to ships so that it's not all on my plate. And something that was meant to be a test rig got snuck in on a check-in that it wasn't supposed to be on and shipped live. And it was helping the person test out the Thant trait. And well, that caused the system to be like, "You own the Cyclone. Here's a trait that doesn't exist." And then the whole power tree was like,
yeah,
so that's what caused that.
yeah. So
And
it was
that's why
trying to
the
give
fix was
people
so quick.
the friendship trait instead of the cyclone trait.
Yeah, it's just a simple mix-up, and
Yep.
yeah, we'll be trying to do better in terms of preventing things like that from making it live. There was actually a QA check that was supposed to stop it too, but it was one of those weird things where like a number of things have to fail in different parts of the org at the same time, and every once in a while they all line up and something makes it through. So
Yeah. Anthony Patton has asked a few times about a full stat sheet on console for starships. I don't. I'm surprised to learn that that doesn't exist. Please, someone get me more details on that. Holy fucker! Wow, you got me to read that out loud. Good job. The DPS parser, once we get it player live, will then eventually make it to console. But we just have to wait for software to have the time to create the UI around the parsing functions they've already programmed. Does the console affect other pets we spawn in or just hangar pets? I believe so.
The passive crit chance is for hanger pets only. The active can apply to any ally, but only hanger pets get the huge bonus.
Yeah. I'll just take fleet marks, thanks.
And the reason for that is purely performance, I would add. I don't see a big design reason to care about hanger pets versus normal pets, but I'm pushing all the mechanics onto hanger pets because of the entity limit issue.
Darth Dragonborn 107, I have to follow up with that as well. As I've mentioned in previous streams, the holdup on all three bridges, the two Federation and the one Klingon that we haven't made player facing or player usable yet, was the fact that none of them had a captain's quarters. And bridges are supposed to have a captain's quarters. That discussion was solved by a few of us in the meeting that day saying, well, what if we just put the consoles that are normally in the captain's quarters on the bridge somewhere? And everyone went, oh, right, we can do that. So we might get um, a speedier process of getting those to you. If we have to wait for environment to have time to build captain's quarters, the chances of getting those ships out to you folks are slim to none. So I'm hoping we can just skip that step and get those consoles in there as soon as we have a content designer's time.
I got a number of questions I'd like to field if I can
Do it.
some random hit
Field
shots.
away.
So, seeing lots of requests for unlocking various carrier pets. I don't think that is something I'm interested in right now, basically because I think it washes out the difference between the ships, and having different ships that are good at different things is pretty critical to having a healthy game design space. Older consoles, I'm more willing to unlock because some of them are actually kind of meta relevant, but they're attached to ships that can't succeed. So those are like prime candidates, and the rest are just kind of harmless. But hanger pets, in particular, something like the sticks, that's like attached to a ship that's meta relevant. I'm definitely not interested in like blasting out the current meta and because like that basically disservices older ships to benefit newer ships, which is something that like sounds like it makes business sense, but for various design, ethical, long-term reasons, there's lots of good reasons not to do that. So I would rather produce alternatives, different kinds of supporty pets to compete with the Styx frigates, rather than like unlock everything for everything in the hanger pet space.
Nice.
Let's see. What other questions did I see in here?
Marked Chief, Jonathan can't answer questions about advanced and elite versions of new TFOs. That's a content thing, but I will ask about that. Or unless you can.
That was actually one of the ones I forgot.
Oh, good.
So to me, that is definitely a content thing. You're absolutely correct in what you said. The thing that interests me is that connects to the difficulty / challenging players space. And to me, that's like I need to figure out what's happening with shields and then figure out where we want to go with our difficulty. And that's going to inform what we decide to ask for with regards to advanced and elite versions of TFOs. And we don't even know what we want. Content listens to us, so if we ask nicely for things, they will often oblige. But right now, we can't, like, we could simply ask for just give us advanced and elite versions of TFOs, but if we do that and then we try to make a bunch of changes to advanced and elite versions of TFOs, we'd be setting ourselves up for like lots and lots of rework. I don't think it's likely. I think typically my approach is try to do no harm, so I'm unlikely to mess with the current advanced elite structure. I'd probably more likely pursue like another difficulty on top of it or something, but I'm not ruling it out, and I definitely don't want to close off angles before I've explored them.
I just want to add a little bit to that. All any TFO we release is supposed to get an advanced and elite version. There's no world where we don't do that. It just some of them. A lot of times, what happens is a lot of work gets put into the TFO for release, and even the advanced and elite versions are made for the content releases that we do, and then the designer immediately, actually before the release, gets put on the next TFO, and it slips somebody's mind that the advanced and elite content doesn't go live. So that's probably what happened with what the TFOs you're mentioning. It's been 2 years for Operation Wolf. Ooh, that's bad. But I will I will follow up on that.
Yeah, the thing is, when you make cuts to get something out the door like that, then you like create what we would call design debt or tech debt, and
Yep,
paying that down can be really hard.
it can.
I'm not like happy with the way engineering powers are on captains right now per se. It's more like it's not acute enough to be a priority, especially since like there's like stuff shifting in terms of like hangar pets ownership kind of wiggling a little bit between science and engineering. Engineering captain powers are definitely like a little bit, to my mind, a little less appealing. But there are no immediate plans there just because they're simply bigger fish.
Yeah.
That's definitely a project that, like, as other designers on the team mature and grow, that's something where it might not need my personal attention. I might be able to hand that one off. And because it's like pretty self-contained, right? It's just like a couple of powers, and it doesn't touch this like vast interplay between like buffing captain engineering powers doesn't suddenly blow out the meta for some whole slot of inventory. So I actually think the quickest path to getting that to happen would be if I find time to give it to somebody else. But it's also I'm pretty reluctant to spend other people's time. That's production's job. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Mark Sherwood, there has been some conversations of uh, can we take can we make it so that like a Federation ship has access to all Federation bridges, which would answer your concern about Section 31 ships. Oh, sorry, that was Derek Geetson that asked the question, not Mark Sherwood. Um, and I'm hoping we can push in that direction. I think it would be better if you could just use whatever ship, cannon not be damned, the opposite of cannon be damned, cannon be followed and recognized, so you wouldn't be able to use like a Fed bridge on a Klingon ship, but you could get access to the ones that are available. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Um, Rafael Figueredo. This is actually a question for Jonathan, sort of. Do you
Okie
know? I
dokie.
think the answer is nowhere, but have we ever made any progress on the ship that is a squad of ships
Oh,
concept?
oh shit. Yeah, no, we never stop talking about that thing.
Oh,
We
good.
poke at it every once in a while. It's one of those things that's like very similar to particle occlusion tech. It's one of those things where we know we really want it, and it's a matter of when, how, and for how much.
Yep.
But yeah, we are super friggin' interested in that.
I did see Christian test out something like he hacked together something to test out on a QA shard at one point, and it looked pretty cool. It
Yeah.
wasn't a finished ship by any stretch of the imagination. It was just him using a costume from another ship. But
Yeah, the difficult implementation questions all run straight through UI and programming.
yeah, um,
Also, I saw a question in there I want to grab,
yeah,
which
go
is
for it.
random. It's something we get every stream, but I always like to address it. Random buffer, random old thing that sucks. It's 13 years of game. There are lots of old things that suck. I would very much like to buff them all, but I can't afford to whack them all. So what I do is I gather them. And when I have enough of them to make like a set bonus where I can like justify it as part of a bigger initiative, that's when you see it. So that's where the buffs for the Tholian web spinner array and Agony redistributor came from because they were part of a suite of changes and like changes to the way we do stuff, part of a bigger initiative. So it's easier to like pick them up along the way. But like the lost souls from the Grether ship, for example, like That's tougher. I can't just like go and grab it. There might be like some vast pass I do over all hanger pets, but I sincerely doubt that. So ultimately, unless it connects to some part of a broader initiative, probably it is not going to receive special attention just due to the there's just not enough time.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, folks, I am looking at the chats. Jonathan, was there anything else you wanted to cover before I start wrapping this up
Uh,
here?
Not off the top of my head, but I haven't been reading chat that much. I've been trying to keep an eye on it, but like it's not. I haven't been able to keep up the whole time because
Yeah,
there's no one else to talk.
it's
It's just
going
me.
real
So,
fast.
yeah, it's a lot easier
Yeah.
to read chat when you're not trying to make words. I can have
Uh-huh.
words happening once in my brain. I can be
Now,
speaking, listening, or reading, but not multiple of those.
now read 3 chats, make words, and play game at the same time.
Why are streamers so blind? They're always so bad at videos game. Why is that?
Let's see. Uh, so let's see. Nick NB, that was answered with Jonathan's general fixing old shitty things.
Also, Duncan Idaho's question, we covered that earlier. Yeah, it's
Yep.
pretty straightforward.
There was one. Okay, so Skitchy47 has been asking all night about promoting one of your bridge officers to first officer, which is a really cool concept. I don't know what it would have in gameplay effects, and that would be something for Jonathan to think about, not me. But it's a really cool idea. We haven't, I don't think, talked about it before, but we did used to have a system where you put your crew in positions and gave them, authority over other crew members. I think it's one of those things that could be really cool and also would have potential of spiraling incredibly out of control. So, what do you think, John?
Um, in Star Trek Online 2, it's like, and for the record, we have no plans to make
No.
a Star Trek Online 2. Generally speaking, I mean, you're
Thank you
seeing
for
a big move
clarifying
away.
that.
Well, you're seeing a move away from it in the industry generally. It's not just
Yeah.
us. It's like ultimately, like, why would we make a new game that has a special feature blows up our existing game? We
Yeah.
probably wouldn't. But it's one of those where you can't really bolt a change like that onto the game and do it justice. Like the different positions for different crewmen, that's something that's in the DNA of the show in every time those people do anything. It is
Yeah.
rare to see an episode of Star Trek where their various positions don't matter. And anything we could do would feel slapped on because it would be slapped on. We can't go and build it into 13 years of content. We can't go back to every mission and suddenly like include all these options for these characters to interact. So,
God, I wish
yeah.
we could. My dream for this game would be to actually have your bridge crew have the like Baldur's Gate or that other fifth edition based game thing where you can just be like, they are this alien with these skills and this personality, and then we would have dialogue written for that. But boy, could we not do that 15 years ago, and strapping it on now
Yeah.
would be insane. All right.
I did
Okay.
have one thing I wanted to bring up. So there's been people asking about auto execute conditions on consoles. I went back through all the ships I made and added auto execute conditions to everything that like physically could support it. Some consoles are like you can't realistically do that for various reasons. But I'm very interested in suggestions for more. So if you want to just like kick out some suggestions for like consoles you think should have an auto execute trait, they're not that hard for me to build. So those I can absolutely justify because they make a set bonus of their own. It's like presumably there'll be a lot of them because people have been asking about it for a while. So if I get a decent little package of them together, I can bundle it all up and ship it. So
Yep.
that seems quite doable to me.
Raven Mark says the next transition for MMOs is AR or VR. We will never do that, but Star Trek Bridge Crew is a very good game, and if you can get some friends together with VR headsets, you will have a lot of fun.
Where can you put stuff for me to see it? Official forums. I honestly spy on a lot of player places, so there's a lot of places you can put it. And I'll just see it incidentally, but
put it on
posting
the
to
forums
cryptic
officially.
forums.
Yeah, if you want us to make sure it gets to John.
That's the one I'll guarantee.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, I am going to find us someone to raid. John, I make this joke every time, so I hope you're ready for it. Tell them a joke while I'm finding someone.
Oh.
This is the reaction I get every single time.
Yeah, let me go. No, I can't do it justice. I wanted to do that one Beef Babylon 5 bit with Londo and the like. Do you know what the
man.
last? Yeah, it's a long story. Shit. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, this is our.
You caught me with such a weird one. I have nothing. My brain is just like friggin' emptied.
Well, this person, I don't know if they're talking, but they said in their stream 50 follower goal, so let's get them there, okay, kids?
Thank you, TrueNet, for
it. What is it like being nibbled to death by cats? It's weird because you like them even though they're nibbling you to death.
Well, I always found the strangest part was all the quacking.
Yeah. There you go. All right, Anthony Patton, like I said on Facebook, like I said, I need more details on that. I don't know what's missing, so try to fill me in somehow, especially on the forums. Okay, folks, thank you so much for watching. Yes, Zathras was the funny one, and
I would swear Doctor Who did a whole like tribute to Zathras. There's this one episode where there's basically a character that is just Zathras, to be Zathras, not even like a guy who's like it. He's just there to do the same job. They get him off the screen pretty quick, but it just felt like such a tribute to me.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to hit the raid button, but first, we're going to say thanks for watching tonight, everybody, and bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. I'm going to hit the button in a second.
Live
Don't
long
worry
and
about
prosper.
it. Kapla!